Are you a movie buff? Do you love dissecting and analyzing your favorite films? Look no further than the Projection Booth podcast. Join host Mike White and a bevy of guest experts as they explore the history, themes, and legacy of cult classics, obscure gems, and mainstream hits. Join us every week for a unique and engaging look at your favorite movies. So sit back, grab some popcorn, and tune in to the Projection Booth podcast, available on all major podcast platforms.
Hello, filthy movie lovers. My name is Gentry Austin.
And I'm Casey Scott.
And we're the hosts of the Sin Syndicate, film podcast for something weirdos, anti-criterion bros, and Joseph Sarno aficionados. Join us semi-weekly as we peer into the adults-only theaters and sticky-floored cinemas of the golden age of sexploitation, when the morals were loose, the laws were murky, and the intercourse was all simulated. Find us now on the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bollywood Cinema Club, where we take a look at Indian cinema every other week. I am the host of the Culture Cast, Chris Stachiw, and I am joined by my good friend. He's a graphic artist, but you've heard him here before because we've kind of made it a point to talk about, well, these kinds of movies, and we're going to be talking about another epic action movie. Your friend and mine, Dustin.
Heyo. Going to start off with one of my favorite quotes from the movie. Ready? In battle, you are your best weapon.
I thought your best weapon was a giant cloth you light on fire. I feel like, the actual idea is a good one, but in execution, it leaves something to be desired.
It does.
On this episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, we're going to be taking a look at 2015's little film, but it's not really a little film because it is a massively successful film that spawned not only a sequel, but also another film that has now come out that I think is kind of almost even superseded this one in terms of visibility for Western audiences. We're talking about the director of RRR's first film like this in a lot of ways. We're talking about 2015's Baahubali, The Beginning. So the film is directed by S.S. Rajamouli, based on a screenplay by S.S. Rajamouli, and it stars Prabhas as the titular Baahubali, both Amarendra Baahubali, the father, and Mahendra Baahubali, the son. And well, what is this movie about? It's all about Baahubali is a child who gets sent out of his kingdom on the hand of his aunt, and he has to find out his secret past, I guess. It's a finding out your place in the world, a coming of age story in a way. And yeah, we're going to talk all about it. But Dustin, tell me a little bit, because this is the first time that we're talking about an S.S. Rajamouli film, which I think is important to mention now. Like I said at the top here, we are living in a post-RRR world, which I think is the most, since maybe Slumdog Millionaire, it might be the most visible Western Indian cinema film, most visible to Westerners. It's what it feels like. Like, I know people who watch RRR that would never have watched any other Indian cinema film, but this is where it begins here with 2015's Baahubali.
Yeah, it definitely had like that blockbuster feel to it where, I mean, there was money there, obviously, but it had that 300 epic, building soundtrack and big battle. But then there's also just visuals itself were pretty cool. And there's probably something to just the culture differences of, me watching these films. There's some things that I probably call, I don't know, cheeky and kind of a little corny. I get a kick out of them in these movies we've watched thus far. There's just a lot of lightness to some of the movie, just something I'm not accustomed to. There's just this real childish lightness to certain parts of it.
There is a certain sense of joy that comes through with Indian cinema that, like, I'm not saying it's gone in American cinema specifically, but
they leave room for it.
Yeah, you know what? That's a fantastic way of putting it, and I could not have put it any better. You're completely right. It feels like, in a lot of ways, again, coming at this as two Westerners, one of us has watched more Indian cinema than the other, but I don't think that necessarily makes my opinion more valid. It makes it different than yours, which is what's important here, because, again, it's less about whose opinion is right and more where we're coming at this from, because the person that you are is closer to most people who've never seen Indian cinema. So it's it might be a harder sell for something like this immediately. I would think that, like you just mentioned, something like this is so much more in the wheelhouse of Western audiences than, other than RRR, more than anything else that I have seen Indian cinema wise. But like, that's because action movies, similarly to why our action movies are so popular overseas, you don't need dialogue to be wowed by wild stuff happening in your movie. This isn't Moondram Pirai or Andhandhun or even, what was the one, not Brahmastra, but the other Ranbir Kapoor movie that we watched that was like a rom-com. You need the dialogue. Here, you don't need it, to the point where, again, I'm not advocating people doing this, but if you're so subtitle averse, you can watch this movie dubbed.
Totally.
In English. I wouldn't advocate for it. I think you know what's funny? I've actually watched this movie 4 times. I've watched this movie with the English dubs, and then I've watched it 2 times in its original language of Telugu and then Tamil. I've watched it in both, and then I've also watched it in Hindi just to see, because it, like you mentioned to me privately, like, oh my God, how many versions of this movie are there? Well, on Netflix, there's a lot. Because there's a Tamil and Telugu, because it was shot in Tamil and in Telugu to start with. And then it's also dubbed in Hindi, and then it's also dubbed in English. You can watch it 4 different ways, the same movie, 4 separate times. And frankly, I think you get something different out of it each time, at least when it's between Tamil/Telugu and Hindi. Because I think, obviously all the actors in this film are Telugu or Tamil actors, so they're acting in their dialect that they're comfortable with, and I think there is something to be said for that when you're watching a movie, because we can watch this movie again in Hindi, and I think that's surprising to a lot of people who may be listening to the show for the first time, that in the United States it's English, that's what we speak. I mean, there are dialects of English, but it's more like regional dialects that have specific words, but less an entire language. And in India, similarly to China, where there's Mandarin and Cantonese, similar thing here, where there's Tamil and Telugu and Hindi. And so the actors really are in their home world when they're filming it in Telugu and Tamil. But even with it dubbed in Hindi, you get something different, because, again, the actors who are bringing their voices and performances to those roles do change it in a way that's a little different, that it is not necessarily what the actor is saying versus the dub, which is why we always advocate to not watch things dubbed, because it will change the performance. It just does.
Sure. Yeah.
Being able to hear the actor, even though you can't understand necessarily what they're saying, there is still a lot with nonverbal cues and nonverbal ways of saying things that, go fuck yourself and go fuck yourself are 2 different things said the exact same way.
Yeah, getting the right inflection happens in the language it's meant to be in.
Right. And so the English dub of things is always, that's why I always say to just stay away from it, as I know so many other folks who watch a lot of foreign film do, because, again, you lose something in the translation, and it's not intentional. It's just, it is the way it is. All of that aside, this movie is so much fun that it didn't feel like a chore watching it 4 times. I watched something that is the same movie 4 times, but I got something different from it each time because I was focusing on something different. And it's such an expansive movie with so much going on. Even this first one, because mind you, this is the first one of a 2-parter. And this movie is 158 minutes on its own. This movie, if you were making it in the States, is like 6 fucking movies worth. Like these 2 movies are 6 movies worth is what it's probably going to feel like. Because this feels like 2 movies because it is 2 movies. But you could even go as far as to say this is 3 movies because there's things that they hint at that they don't talk about that they could totally make a movie on itself. And if this was a Western franchise, they totally would because you have Baahubali, then you have his dad, and then you have his dad that they talk about that probably crazy things were happening with him too. So you have 3 movies worth of stuff crammed into this one movie, and it doesn't even feel like it's crammed in. The fact that this movie works as well as it does, technically from a narrative standpoint, may be the most impressive thing about the movie. And if you were to sit down and watch it, which you totally should, that would be surprising that its ability to navigate a complex narrative is the most impressive thing about it. Because it's technically visually impressive and it's well acted.
Yeah, agreed.
Like it's so much fun in a way that I feel like so many Westerners do not expect foreign cinema to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is Indian cinema. And I feel like if we had watched this as the first movie we did together, I feel like that would have taken you more as by surprise than it has now.
Yeah. And I got how it starts, you kind of mentioned it already, like grandma carrying baby Baahubali. Well, that's a tongue twister. Through the river. It kind of had like a Moses vibe to it. Or, Moses in the basket floating down the river till somebody finds him and meant for great things.
And it makes it so epic from frame one.
And grandma's she's got some lungs on her to be able to, and some leg strength to hold against that current, the way she holds that baby above the water. Those of you listening, you got to see it to know what we're talking about. It's pretty, like you said, it's an epic way to start a movie, and it just gets better.
And on top of everything else, I mean, again, this is not based on anything. I mean, this is not based on a book. It's somewhat loosely inspired by the Mahabharata, but okay, fine. I mean, that's a great place to start. But again, it's its own thing, which again, if that alone feels so strange in 2023 as a Westerner. Like we rarely have things anymore that are their own thing, this popular, this successful, that takes hold as much as, I mean, again, we have RRR now because of how successful this movie. That's why this movie is so important. Even if you watch this and it's just an action movie, it would lead to a movie that now I think is crossing cultural boundaries in a really exciting way. We don't have RRR without this movie, but this movie is amazing on its own, which is surprising because it's an original idea. And those feel so rare anymore. Yeah,
because anymore, everything's got a comic book, or everything has a book, or video game, or a movie that was done in the 70s or 80s that they're remaking. That's pretty much all movies are anymore.
And that's not us being cynical. I mean, it is partially, but at the same time, it isn't. Because it really is, as someone who watches a lot of content, as do you, some of the shows that I watch, like What We Do in the Shadows, that show is based off of a movie that was its own original thing, but it is based on something else. Or, Star Wars or Marvel or Indiana Jones or most of the things.
Everything's got a spin-off.
Right. Everything was from something else, and it was a pre-established IP. And again, yes, Baahubali is inspired by the Mahabharata, but that's like saying my movie's inspired by tales from the Bible. It's it's not something that you're really having to go very far outside of a mainstream pop culture track to say you're inspired by. Most people would understand in India, the Mahabharata, it's inspired by that. Okay, that's a cultural touchstone that almost everybody understands. So that's why you're inspired by it, because it's just a base cultural indicator now, in a way that almost Marvel is now, I'm not necessarily, but in that same kind of biggest common denominator, you need to find the way to appeal to the most people as quickly as possible. With something like this, it's just inspired by an epic that everybody has a frame of reference for.
The other thing that was just how the movie started out, that big looming mountain waterfall, it just seemed like it was impossible. And so I guess to preface a little bit, Baahubali's in this village that's at the base of a mountain, base of a waterfall. It's basically their own world. They don't even know if there's a world up there. That's what I gather anyway. Some people might have an inkling, but they have no interest in finding out. And but that's always in the shot at the beginning of the movie. There's always a background of like this huge unclimbable mountain, and Baahubali keeps trying to climb it, keeps falling down, and that's when I kind of realized like he's more than just a man. Like there's something to him because he falls hard a lot. So I'm like, okay, he's got a little something extra.
Well, and that's, that is the thing about this specific movie is that, like you were just talking about with this like opening, I guess more or less first act of the movie. He's not a superhero, but that's like the only comparison I think we have
Hercules.
Here. Yeah, it's again, like it's not a superhero story, but we don't make these kinds of movies in the West anymore. Like there was that Hercules movie that came out with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson a couple of years ago that I don't think anybody really saw. I had heard anybody talk about it past when it came out, other than, The Rock maybe lamenting it wasn't as successful as he wanted it to be. But the scope of this movie feels so like old school. Like the story it's telling with horses and swords. And I like that Indian cinema seemingly is tapping into that era of storytelling in a really natural way that just works. Because it works in RRR. It didn't really work in Brahmastra, but Brahmastra is less inspired by those kinds of movies, the Ben-Hur, the Ten Commandment style film, and more a Marvel movie specifically. But it still does have that kind of mythological touch to it because that movie's more inspired by the gods of the Hindu religion more than it is any specific epic. But that's why I think this works. This movie for me is essentially neck and neck with RRR in terms of the pinnacle, or at least the current pinnacle of what Indian cinema can be in an epic format. This movie and RRR are kind of that pinnacle right now. And I don't think that that's the peak that they can ultimately will get to. I think it's lower down. I think we're going to see something that's really going to blow people away and catch the attention of the world more than RRR did. But this really sets a tone for, in my mind, with this first act of like, you're about to see something that is even more over the top than what we're showing you now. And right now we're showing you a guy climbing a waterfall by his bearing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much more epic do we need to show you? But then we escalate it. And it is kind of a cheat. And I wonder how you feel about this. It feels like a cheat to tell the story of Bahubali's dad in this movie because we sideline our character that we're following in the first act for the rest of the movie. But like, I know that if we had been watching this as a Western style film, that we wouldn't have had it told this way. We would have had its own movie and then another movie and then another movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like I'm more invested in that story of his father because I got invested in his story initially. And that's such smart storytelling. Yes, it kind of holds back the I guess the payoff for the audience. You kind of, by the end of this movie, it's a little disappointing, right? By the end of it, you're like, oh man, like that's how you're doing it. But I mean, again, we live in a post-Baahubali 2 world where we could just crank it up right now on the internet and watch it. We don't have to wait. So it kind of doesn't matter. But I appreciate the way they do the storytelling here because, again, like I'm invested, and I would not have been if they had started it with, oh, this is his dad. And then you meet him. Meeting him first and seeing his story, I think is a really smart way of telling the story, even if he gets sidetracked and sidelined in the second and third act of his own movie.
Well, what I liked about it, the storytelling aspect you're talking about, is again, they've got these top mountain dweller people and these bottom mountain dweller people. And like it gives you the feeling that they're going to meet, it's going to happen. Bahubali's going to get to the top of that mountain and he's going to see what's up there. And so they do a good job of like those two worlds are gonna come to a head and they're gonna slam into each other. And they tell it's his brother that's up there, right?
No, it's his uncle.
It's his uncle that's up there. Okay.
But again, like that's the problem with this movie is he plays his own father, which kind of just not that the narrative doesn't make it clear that that's what happens, but if you miss that line of dialogue on the screen, you are fucked. big
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Like
it gets a little. When it first happened, I was like, "Whoa, what?"
because he's just playing. He looks the same.
Yep,
He
it's
looks
him.
like
Yeah.
his dad looks just like he did the Baahubali that we've been following the entire movie.
Yeah. So, but I like the fact that they're drawing them closer and closer. It's coming to a head, and then it's like, okay, we're going to take a moment and tell you what got us to this point, which I appreciate that. I needed to know it.
Well, and again, like it's just interesting because I don't think that would have been the choice that would have been made if they had been telling it as a Western style narrative.
No, yeah, it wouldn't have.
But it works really well here. And I think it also, I mean, again, it leads to some confusion, but I think ultimately it was the right decision to have Prabhas play his father, playing the dual role. I think it is obviously kind of confusing because they look the same. They don't look any different. I mean, they could have had him like a different style of facial hair or a different kind of hair. He's just wearing armor as opposed to not wearing armor. Like that kind of is what it comes down to. But it was so smart to have him playing the dual role that it works and it pays off. And it doesn't feel like a gimmick, and it totally should have. And it totally would have, but it doesn't. It doesn't feel like a gimmick, but it also really helps kind of make you fall in love with the character that you saw to begin with all over again, because it is still the same actor playing the guy's dad, doing a lot of the same mannerisms, a lot of the same, he's just playing the same character. So it doesn't really feel like we're not seeing him the entire movie, even though we aren't.
The part of the story, like his journey to get to that point, to see his uncle, there's like another tribe of people or another band of people that are, I'm guessing, were outcasts from the city. It's kind of what I gather. Anyway, the love interest enters at that point, and that whole story was kind of where that point of the movie is kind of where that joy we talked about kicked in. It was just this childlike joy. This, he's pursuing this girl who's tough and like the warrior, and there is a moment where it's kind of like, whoa, Baahubali. Take your foot off the gas. Let that poor girl make her own decision.
Are you?
When he just
I'm assuming you're talking about the musical number between the two of them where he's stripping her
and spraying her with water. Yeah, watching that part. I mean, I get what's happening. He's trying to like get rid of the warrior part of her and like, hey, let your beauty show, but how he's doing it, it's like, whoa, buddy.
I really like that actress, Tamannaah. I haven't seen her in anything else, and she's again, huge actress in Telugu and Tamil cinema, but she can stand up to the charisma bomb that is Prabhas. I mean, he's a charismatic dude and then some. Like, and then some. He has just, I don't know, he looks like he's just one of those people that looks like a nice person. Like, does that make sense? Like when he smiles, it's just like, all right, like you've got me. You've got me. Like, and all you've got to do is just continue to be charming. And he's charming throughout. Like this is a role that, again, I don't think anybody could have played it, but with the right person in that role, it really sings. And he is just so damn charismatic that I watch him do anything, even play his own father.
Well, and again, there might be like this cultural difference. But his whole pursuit of her, I just found kind of silly, almost like fun silly.
It could have been creepy, right?
Right. Like he just keeps sneaking up on her and like tattooing her.
Tattooing her hand in the river while she's not paying attention.
Yeah.
Which is a strange scene, but it's so fucking weird. It's again, it's not like it's just weird because again, like this is a scene between two characters that in any other context would not work this well. And yet it does here.
Yeah.
And at one point in the movie, and when I say by one point, I mean, when he's introduced, they introduce him by having him wrestle a massive bull barehanded. Right. He grabs the bull by the horns, literally. And it's what a way to introduce the villain of your film, I guess. Yeah. Holy shit.
Because at that point now, okay, here are these two Herculean style characters, both strong. One's happy and charismatic. The other one is just mean and, I don't know, stick in the mud.
Yeah, like I will say that's kind of the one issue I have with the film is I feel like, And maybe this is rectified in Baahubali, the conclusion, but I felt a little lacking in the villain, in the Baladeva character. He's just, when we see him, because we don't really see him a whole lot, we see him a couple times in the present day story, but he's a bigger force in the past story, because the ultimate kind of conflict here is Baahubali was king because his mom, who was queen, said whoever kills the head of this tribe of, I guess, nomadic Indian monsters, like human monster people. Like, I don't know how else to describe them. Whoever kills their leader becomes king, and it's Baladeva and Baahubali, the dad Baahubali. And even though Baladeva kills that guy, Baahubali still becomes king. And that's the entire conflict that our movie is centering around, or is, I guess, kind of existing in the fallout of. And
it's because of his ruthless methods to do so.
The character of Bijaladeva, played by Nassar, the man with the kind of the deformed arm, he's more the villain than Baladeva is. He's more kind of pushing the issue of, you should have been king and you're not king and you are king now. And we don't know how he is the prince, now king. We don't know how until the end of the movie. But I really kind of wanted more from Rana Daggubati's character in this movie. And again, I'm sure we'll see more of it in the conclusion because, well, he's the main villain. At least that's what we're led to believe here going into the end of this movie. But he's not really a villain in those past scenes. Like you said, he's just kind of, his methods may be a little too extreme for everybody to get on board with.
One of the key moments of that whole, like, whoever kills this guy will be king. One of the methods that he does is he mows through a bunch of his own people to get to this guy that he's supposed to kill, whereas Baahubali saves the people. And the line here is, a warrior can become a hero by killing 10 people on a battlefield, but by saving one life, a warrior becomes a god. Oh, heavy.
Well, and I think that I mean, it ties right into kind of, it's a little on the nose that Baahubali looks like his dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, again, like it makes sense, but when you have a line like that in the movie, it kind of puts it into context of the epic nature and scale of the film. Kind of makes more sense that it's a generational tale of kind of like, again, the chickens coming home to roost in a way. Because by the end of the movie, we're shown that a character who has scruples, clearly, like beyond having scruples, the Katapata, or I guess Katapa. I guess it's Katapa. The Katapa character, played by Satharaj, he has scruples throughout the entire movie that he tries to be bought at one point, and he's the leader of the armed forces for Baahubali, in the past, and Baladeva in the present. He has scruples, but by the end of the movie, we figure out why Baahubali's dad is dead, and it has to do directly with him. And it, again, I think it just further reinforces this kind of like everything happens for a reason, and boy, now we're going to have to see what happens when, again, the gods have their way with the situation. And it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's an interesting kind of layer to the story that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
Yeah, that did kind of come out of left field. Did not expect that.
But I like the Katapa character, especially that duel that he has at the beginning of the movie with that traitor who's trying to buy him.
He's kind of a badass.
And I like that he's like an older guy. It's not like, it's not a younger character. We have this kind of like old badass guy kicking the ass of this traitor who comes to, I guess he comes to kind of like
sell swords.
I guess so. And he's trying to, I guess, sell his wares and really talk up his wares. But I like that while we do have the Katapa character and Avantika, the female character played by Tamannaah, I like that they are in the movie, but it really is more or less Prabhas's film throughout. I mean, he
owns it.
Yeah, he owns it. And again, to the detriment of the movie, do we have somebody like Rana Daggubati being underused, but Prabhas is so good, it kind of elevates everything else. I'm not really missing a villain because he's such a good hero. And yeah, I mean, the Kalakeya tribe, they are so interesting to look at and so kind of mustache twirlingly dastardly, really. That like I'm okay with them being the stand-in villains for the second act of this movie, but I really hope in the sequel we get to see more of how much of a bastard Rana Daggubati is, or how much of a bastard he isn't. And this is just, put upon him. Again, it's not really clear because we don't really get to spend a whole lot of time with him in the present.
Yeah, it definitely had me. I was hooked on it. And so when it ended and how it ended, I had that moment of, come on.
Well,
I wanted more. I want to see more of the Baahubali character. I want to see more of everybody.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that is the thing for me, about this movie, when we get to the end and we have this kind of revelation that, Katappa killed Bahubali's dad. He's the reason effectively all of this has happened. I feel like it is a little bit of a cheat because I don't know, we always talk about like, did they tell a complete narrative here? I kind of doesn't feel like they did. And that is a little bit of a problem for me just because, again, yes, I know that there is another movie, but at one point there wasn't another movie. It was just this one. And I don't feel like the movie necessarily tells a complete narrative. I feel like it does a good job of setting up a narrative that we're going to see in the next movie, but people had to wait over 2 years to see the conclusion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like that. I take a little bit of an issue with that because they don't really tell a whole story here. If they had told the second act entirely and it ended, because that's the thing, they're going to have to go back to the past in the next movie because they're going to show us how Katappa killed Bahubali's dad. They have to, right? While I like that they more or less land the complex narrative of the movie, I think by it being so kind of narratively disjointed by the time that they're doing, the flashback halfway through the movie, I feel like it does undercut a whole movie existing here. It feels like half of the story. For 2 stories, it feels like half of the story. It feels like half of the story for the past and half of the story for the present. And
they've got a lot to button up.
Right. And it feels like they might have wanted to tell one of those as a complete narrative in one of these movies because it is kind of a cheat.
Yeah.
And I might be a little upset if I had seen this movie in the theaters and it was like, it ended that way. I'm like, fuck, really? It's like in The Hobbit. You remember the second Hobbit movie where like, Smaug just leaves the cave and then you see him flying over the city? It's like that. It's like, man, you couldn't have even given us a conclusion to one of the stories? Because we see that Baahubali becomes king, but that is only half of that story.
Yeah, you buy a movie ticket to go see one movie, you get 2 in one movie, and neither one gets concluded.
Yeah, they're both really compellingly told. That's why I think we're both completely willing to give it a pass. But if this movie were not as successful as it is, I would 100% have a issue with it, and it would really undercut how successful this movie. Because again, yes, there is a second movie that we can totally just watch right now as opposed to talking about the first one, but that wasn't the case when it came out, and that's how we're watching this. And it's 158 minutes on its own. Like that is almost 2 movies. So you spent almost 2 movies telling half of a story of 2 stories. That's a little underwhelming, unfortunately. But yeah, what we get is so exciting and different and unique that it really just, I kind of forget. And that's the important part. But it does kind of bear mentioning because most of the time it's not that successful. 9 times out of 10, they're not this successful because we've seen it. And again, like mentioning The Hobbit, or I'm sure we could start rattling off plenty of other movies that are kind of not a full story. They tell 2/3 of a story, and then the conclusion comes in another movie if it ever comes at all. So we've seen plenty of movies that it's setting up another movie that never even happens. So, like, Jesus Christ, I'm not sure that's any better than this. It's probably worse, frankly.
Yeah, it guarantees that second movie ticket.
If anything. How did you feel about the CGI and kind of the special effects in this movie?
Well, I mean, you could tell it wasn't like a 2023 CGI movie, but I think it was still well done in the areas that they did it. Like that huge statue they were trying to erect, like that looked good. Like that seemed like it fit right in. Like you couldn't really tell too much that was CGI. It was well done in some parts, and in some parts it was a little not.
Yes, I think the spots where I was noticing kind of maybe less polish was towards the end of the film in a lot of the fight scenes, it felt like they were using some tricks to maybe get around better CGI than they had. Like a lot of the kind of far away shots of them on the battlefield they don't look great, where they're trying to like set, Rana Daggubati or Prabhas like in the thick of the fight and try to show that there's an actual battle going on around them, and it's not just them with a green screen in the background. Like it doesn't look great, but the stuff at the beginning with the waterfall and all of that, it's so bright and colorful. Even if it doesn't look amazing, it makes up for it by being kind of stylistically interesting to look at. And so different from, again, like you mentioned at the top here, like this movie really has a lot of like heart and joy, and you can tell that everyone making it was having a good time together. Yeah. And like we were talking about with, everything being just a franchise now, that's such a cynical way of looking at it, but it's true. Like anymore, I don't know how much joy and love goes into making stuff that we consume like this, because my assumption, as I'm sure your assumption is, it's all very soulless and corporate.
Yeah, just coming to do a job.
Right.
Getting your check.
I don't know how true that is. I don't know how real, true to life that is. But when we see, 13 million Marvel things in the span of 10 years, or however many failed DC things or failed universe, connected universe attempts like the Universal Dark Universe stuff, it all feels kind of corporate-y and not for the right reasons. I'm sure SS Rajamouli is not complaining that there's a franchise surrounding Baahubali now with novels and an upcoming TV show and a video game and a sequel to the first film. Sure, he's not complaining. Went on to make RRR, which has a sequel to It coming out. I'm sure nobody's complaining about these movies being successful, but that wasn't the intent going into this, was to make a franchise.
For a comparison, just about people really enjoying what they do, is Tom Hiddleston played Loki, and he's appeared, I think, in the most Marvel things out of any character.
Right.
I think by now, like, is he still like, I'm Loki, I'm going to come in and be Loki? Wow, yeah. Or is it like, that'd be an interesting, interesting thing to know is like, by now, is it like, okay, I gotta go do Loki?
Right. Like, was Robert Downey Jr. not wanting to do Iron Man because he was done, or was it because he wanted to work on other things? Right? Like, I'm with you. Like, it again, like, there's 2 movies and a TV show coming out with Baahubali, and there's other kind of related ephemera, but we're not getting Baahubali movies from here until eternity. That's what we're getting with Brahmastra. At least that's their intention. Their outward intention, as they've said as much. I feel like it'll be interesting to see if that continuous need for content that we clearly have here is one that is going to be reflected with stuff like Brahmastra, with movies and books and blah, 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 TV and everything.
Squeeze more juice out of the orange.
Right. Like, I wonder how will that be received in India versus how we receive it? Because again, there's the whole DC and Marvel fanboys, which are just people who consume the content with, essentially with no filter, is what the way of deriding those people, right? I don't think it's a fair criticism. I mean, it's a criticism. I'm not sure how fair it is. Like, I know that there are plenty of people that are fanboys that do have discerning tastes, but I wonder if something like this is something that will be received positively in Indian culture. Because again, like, for us, I get why we're into tons of content all the time, being bombarded with stuff, but Brahmastra maybe won't be as successful. That MCU style of storytelling. This had a definite 1, 2. That's it. So
yeah,
again,
which I actually, I mean, like you mentioned, bit of an old school storytelling, old school way of doing a movie, and I actually like having part 1, part 2. It's over. That way, if I ever wanted to go back and watch the story again, I can watch part 1, part 2, and it's over again. If I ever wanted to do that with Marvel stuff, my God, I'm going to be watching stuff for years.
Well, and to the point where the story is still going. 12 years on now, 13 years on, whatever the fuck it is. It's 15 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
08.
Which, like, it's cool to expand a universe, but then if I ever wanted to, like share with my kids, oh, you got to see this movie. Well, now they see this one, they have to see all the others. I get that's the idea.
Right.
But then it's like, well, that's now we're in this committed thing that we have to get through.
Right. We've as they say, we've opened this box and now we're really like, and like you just said, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but it is such a modern way of doing things that the expectation is more and more and more and more and more like, oh my God, we're getting more of this. Like, how are you only doing 2 seasons? Like you should be doing 30 seasons and keep printing money. And again, we talk about it a lot on the Culture Cast and we have not really talked about it here because frankly, this may come as a surprise, and I think I've mentioned it when we've done these before. I don't know how many times I've mentioned it with other folks. Sequels in Indian cinema, not a fucking thing. Not a thing. Like, there's DDLJ. There's no sequel to DDLJ. There's Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, which is a spiritual sequel, has a lot of the same actors, but not the same characters. And then there's K3G, similar to Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, similar to DDLJ, but different characters being played by the same actors. In American cinema or Western cinema, you would have had DDLJ 3 times. It wouldn't have been 3 different movies with different characters. This, Baahubali having a sequel, again, not as surprising as what ended up happening and what they're trying to do with Brahmastra, where it's actually a sequel. This is less of a sequel for Baahubali, but more of like the actual full story. That's, I think, going back to my complaint with this movie, like it's not a full movie. It's just not.
Yeah, they just didn't want to keep people in the movie theater seats for 6 hours.
Right. Because, that's really what we're talking about. This movie's 158 minutes and Baahubali 2 is 171 minutes. It's longer by 10 minutes. That's a day's worth of watching a movie. But like you said, it's a day and that's it. It's not, I don't know what it would take right now if you sat down and watched Iron Man to, I guess, whatever's coming out next month, Quantumania. If you watched everything from Iron Man to Quantumania, what that would take, including TV shows, one-shots, all the TV shows. I'm talking S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm talking fucking Ghost Riders. I guess Ghost Rider never had a show, but not the Eternals, the other one, the one that was on TV that they referenced in Doctor Strange. But like nobody actually thought anybody thought about it. The show with Anson Mount. Like there's all these weird things that you would have to watch to really get a entire understanding of the story. And who knows how long that would take. Unrealistic amount of time is what. And I think it is kind of like it's made us as consumers cynical because there's never just, and that's it. Even when it's something like Halloween Ends, like even everybody assumes like, well, they're going to just make more anyways. It might not be that storyline,
because
but like
people want them to.
Right, because the expectation is I want more and you will give me more. And, there's 2 Baahubali movies and a TV show. Like, okay.
That can be enough.
That can be enough. I know very little about the sequel. I know that there is, the second part of the story and it is a longer movie and the poster for Baahubali, the conclusion, looks epic as fuck. But I don't know where the story goes because I'm genuinely invested in the story. And that, I think, for me is something that I cannot say for most of the big budget content that I consume, that I'm genuinely invested. And I think that, again, that's a massive success here, that the storytelling part, the actual narrative, as much as they don't finish it, it doesn't get lost. It's not secondary to the action. It is as important to the filmmakers as the action is.
I was just looking up the artwork. Yeah, that does look epic.
Right?
Looks awesome.
And the thing about this movie that I also appreciate is when we say something is epic, like that's a subjective term. There's not really one definition for it. It's kind of a catch-all definition. And we could use, like you mentioned, Moses, like 10 Commandments, Ben-Hur, Lawrence of Arabia, like big, epic, huge productions.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore. And not only does it not happen, but when it happens in American cinema, it's comic book movies or Star Wars movies. I'm not as invested in those movies as I am in something like this. They actually put in time and effort into this to get me invested in characters that I had no entry point for before I watched the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a complete blank slate.
Like, how wild is that? I'm more invested in Baahubali than I ever was in Ben Affleck as Batman, a character that I genuinely have an immense amount of love and affection for outside of the films. I love Batman as a superhero. I'm more invested in Baahubali in his films than I ever was in a Batman character in DC's films.
Yeah, I get that.
And it goes back to the storytelling and the way that they do it. And the fact that, again, you have these charismatic leads just being able to convey to the audience without talking who they are as a character and what you're kind of expecting them to do. Because again, I think that's a big success here. This movie is just an opportunity to not need to have dialogue that anybody really cares about. Again, it's really good and I'm really invested, but you can watch this without it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you've got me thinking I want to go watch it in one of the other languages or dialects.
It's different. Again, my preferred is probably Telugu, because again, I mean, Prabhas is a Telugu actor, and if he is the lead, like I would prefer to see him in his native dialect that he's known for. But again, the Hindu one and the Tamil one have their own kind of flavor to them. This is a fun movie. I mean, this is a movie that is less needs to be watched and more needs to be experienced, because there's nothing like it other than RRR, but there was nothing else like RRR other than this.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't seen RRR yet, though, right?
I have not.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's the, because this is set in kind of the sword and armor times, right? RRR is set more in the British occupation, but it's this level of, I guess, like over the top action. And I don't what would you call this? Because it's not a superhero movie, but the characters are doing superhuman things, like Baahubali picking up the giant, I forget what it's called, the lingam, the Lord Shiva lingam, and he's walking down with it. I mean, that's a superhero thing. He's a superhero, but he's not.
Mythological.
Yeah. And we just don't have that anymore. And it's so weird, because that for the longest time was a huge part of storytelling, was going back to these old Greek and Roman myths of Hercules and Zeus and Hades and all of that. Like, that has a place in pop culture. It's just so much fun to see the Indian version of that in a lot of ways, and how different and how unique and how fun and again, how completely over the top in the best way this movie is, just like RRR. And whatever the sequel to RRR is will probably be even more bombastic and even more over the top than this. Because mind you, this is over the top. RRR is even more over the top than this movie. Because again, you've got guns and swords and cars and motorcycles, and it's more contemporary. So imagine what this movie is like, but with access to more contemporary things. And then you can go through all the machinations in your head of what that movie looks like. Because you know what? It's even more insane than you're imagining it is.
If this were an American film, who would you cast as Baahubali?
I'm not sure there's anybody who's charismatic enough that can do it.
Closest one that comes to my mind, The Rock. Closest.
But if Prabhas is 100, The Rock is like an 8 out of 100. I think I honestly can say, and I take shit for it, take flack, whatever. I feel like Indian actors are just more charismatic than American actors, Western actors.
I'd agree with that, because there's parts of Baahubali that obviously the physical nature of the character, The Rock could pull that off. But I can't picture The Rock swimming up in a stream and tattooing some girl's hand.
There's a vulnerability to it that's not there. It's a real human quality that doesn't feel fake. It's not a put on. Even if it is a put on and Prabhas is just acting, I believe inherently that he has embodied that character completely.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. I can't think of anybody that can pull off that range of stuff
that convincingly. Again, it's a convincing nature, right? Like even clearly someone like The Rock has his limitations. Black Adam was successful, but I don't think it was as a massive success as even he was expecting. And I think that hurts someone like that's ability to perceive themselves as able to transcend as many boundaries as he can. Because again, The Rock is a massive movie star who is popular all over the world because he is charismatic. But I think it pales in comparison to the natural charisma that Amir Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, Ranbir Kapoor, Prabhas. I don't think that we really can comprehend it. I think we're just sitting and being in that moment with them. But I genuinely cannot comprehend the amount of love that these actors have in India, because we just don't have that here. We just don't. It's not a thing. It just isn't.
I feel like that they're overjoyed to be doing what they do.
And shouldn't you? And that's shouldn't you? Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Aren't you're completely right. And that, I think, again, like you said, leaving a space for that in storytelling to really like let the audience know, I'm happy you're here. Thank you for coming to see the movie. I'm going to show you something that is indicative of who I am as a creator. And it's something that I really want to show you. Again, I don't want to be a cynic and say it's not there in American cinema, because it is. It's in American cinema. It's in a lot of Western cinema still. But I think the perception, and rightfully so, is a lot of it has been drained because, again, that doesn't make money. So why do it?
Yeah.
And you know what? Baahubali is the fifth highest grossing Indian film ever, and the 13th highest grossing Indian film worldwide. So,
wow.
Yeah. And Baahubali 2 ended up being the highest grossing film of all time in India. So, like, again, and that's with something like RRR being out. Baahubali 2 made 1,400 crore. That's a lot. That's a lot. It's not Endgame, but so what? It doesn't have to be. And frankly, it's more entertaining than Endgame ever was, because I don't know where this is going. This is a completely unique thing that is not based on something else one-to-one. Even if it is inspired by something, it's not based on it. It's not, I'm taking these characters and we're going to do Infinity War thing or an Infinity Gauntlet story. Like, you know the beats. Even if we change them, you know the beats.
Yeah. Before the movie comes out, you know what's going to happen.
Right. Even if you don't know exactly, you got the basic idea because it's a Marvel. And maybe we'll get there with Indian cinema. Maybe we will. I'm not there yet, and I'm enjoying the journey of not being there as long as I can.
Same. I've been really enjoying watching these.
Let me ask you, between this and Brahmastra, where are you picking? You picking this?
Ooh.
Better dialogue here.
Especially in that realm. I'm probably more pulled into this. I mean, I'm excited to see where the Brahmastra stuff goes with the Astroverse, but I am enjoying this movie more.
I think this makes a case for like a contemporary epic done in the vein of Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments, in a way that those filmmakers would see this and go, "Oh my God." They would be floored. They would be floored by this versus something like, Avengers Endgame or whatever the fuck. Like, they would watch this and go, "Wow, like what a continuing kind of evolution of our genre." And again, these kinds of movies don't get made anymore in the States, and I'm glad that we're still able to enjoy them from India. And hopefully, again, with something like RRR getting a sequel, who knows how that'll be received here in the States. But this is where it all started, was Baahubali. And Baahubali was a big deal when it came out on Netflix. Like, it wasn't like, it was a couple of years ago, but it didn't just come to Netflix and nobody heard about it. Like, it was a big deal. So definitely worth checking out on Netflix. And yeah, I mean, you could do worse, but I'm not sure you could do better in this sphere of Indian cinema, other than maybe RRR. But they're different. They're scratching different itches. This is an itch that is non-gun, non-British violent related. You want to see the Brits get their comeuppance, watch RRR. You want to see an epic on a grand scale, this is what you're going to watch. They scratch a different itch, but they're on the same kind of plane. It's just different expectation.
And yeah, there's CGI for crowds of people that are used, sure. But they're kind of like, you mentioned the Ben-Hur stuff, the large scale of cast is kind of cool to see, because that just adds, I don't know, a vastness to it that, I mean, you watch Endgame, most of the things that show up in Endgame, at the climax of the movie is all CGI'd things, right? You look at Baahubali, yeah, there's some of that in those wide shots, but there are a lot of people on the screen, and there's just something cool about that. You feel that when you watch it.
The scope and the scale are apparent.
Yeah.
I kind of mentioned it at the top of the episode, and I feel like now that we've kind of mentioned a specific part of the movie, the idea of shooting cloth soaked in some sort of flammable liquid onto a crowd of soldiers and then lighting it on fire, while it seems like it would be a no-brainer. Like,
I've never seen that in a movie before.
No, it's so weird, because it makes sense. They light them on fire when they're on the ground, but then they start lighting them on fire when they're in the air, which, like, what does that do?
Just terrifying.
It's like you said, it's a unique visual that I've never seen before. And if that is something that excites you to see things you've never seen before in cinema, you're in the right place. Because RRR has some shit that would, like, this movie has some stuff I've never seen before, but RRR continues it. And like, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I like that end of part one, like the different strategies being used in the battlefield and stuff. It was just kind of like, oh, that's cool. Haven't seen that one before. Oh, that's neat.
And I appreciate that the movie doesn't pull any punches with the violence. Like, people are getting heads, arms, legs cut off.
Oh, yeah.
Because there is, Baahubali, the son, does kind of, he does get a moment where he gets to cut a guy's head off, which I really did appreciate that scene. Talk about style, just like oh my God, it's so good. He just shunk, and it like cuts to him, like the head flying through the air. It's so much fun, but it, like, again, like, I don't expect movies like this to kind of hew close to the reality of things with people getting their arms and legs cut off and it showing it. But yeah, there you go. I appreciate that. Like, I do appreciate that, because it's not kind of dumbing it down for me for no reason. I want to watch a movie like this. I want to see them showing people getting their arms and legs cut off. Like, that's what happens, or show it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is a fun movie, man. I'm excited to watch the sequel.
Is that going to be our next one?
I guess the conclusion. It's not even the sequel. It's a conclusion. It's you can't call it a sequel because there's no story without this movie.
True.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, do you want to do the next movie as the next thing we do? Okay. So
I'm going to watch it anyway. So
yeah. So the next time you hear Dustin and I doing an episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, we're going to be talking about 2017's Baahubali 2, The Conclusion. So until then, I want to thank you, Dustin, for joining me. Obviously, if you want to find more episodes of Dustin and I talking about the Bollywood Cinema Club, go to BollywoodCinemaClub.com. But if you want to hear more episodes of Dustin and I not talking about Indian cinema, you can go on over to WeirdingWayMedia.com, where you can find episodes of the Culture Cast where Dustin and I talk about all kinds of different stuff, not just Indian cinema. Shocking, I know.
Or if you want to hear us talk about some other stuff, just dial 1-900.
What? Knows that number. And for everything else, WeirdingWayMedia.com, along with this show and so many other fantastic shows being made by the crew over at WeirdingWayMedia.com. Like, rate, and review the show on iTunes and Spotify or wherever you get this show, and we'll catch you on the next episode.